Hello gamers, what's up? Happy Friday. My name's Haiyue. I'm here with Skybilz. We are bringing you coverage of the first week of playoffs in VML Season 7. And Skybilz, before we get into it, just a massive shout out, of course, to Wizards of the Coast, who sponsors the VML and this production. Massive shout out to Nerd Rage Gaming Championship Series, our WPN store partner, and of course Season 7 prize pool sponsors. Good luck, high five, the best podcast in the Magic Sphere. Skybilz, how are you doing today on this fine Friday?
I am doing great. I'm very excited to see the matchups from tonight. We have a lot of goodies in store for y'all tonight. And it's week 1 of the playoffs. How could you not be excited?
It's playoffs time! Let's go! Oh, yeah, this is the most exciting part of the season. The players have finished their round robin part, their division play part of the of season 7. We're into the playoffs week. Let's just pull up the playoffs bracket so we can tell everybody a little bit about how the next 3 weeks work. We are currently in the Wildcard Round, which is that first column that you see there on the left. That's this week's matches. So that was made up of the runners up from each division going up against the 8 losers, shall we say, not losers, but wildcards who did not make top 2 of their division, but they had the best standings after those top 2 from each pod made it through. So that's this week. Next week, the winners of each division, you see their names already filled in the round of 16. They got a bye this week. They are going to be playing up against the winners of this week. And then from there on, it's just normal single elimination. And we are going to, of course, have all of the top 8 in that final week. So the quarterfinals, we're going to record them early on in that week, and then we will be playing the semifinals and finals live here on this very broadcast on in 2 weeks' time. So that is what is coming up for the playoffs rounds. And Skybilz, just looking at the names that have made these playoffs, what an incredible set of talent we have.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it before and I'll say it again. I've been in many different kinds of Magic tournaments and leagues. The VML is by far the most competitive I've ever been, and everybody just gives their 100% all the time. You never know what to expect. There's those meta choices, and there's people who meta choices. So again, going into the playoffs now, especially in the first couple of rounds, those deck selections are going to be very pivotal to see, all right, well, you have all of this knowledge about your opponent. How do you think they're going to approach the playoffs? And that's really one of the toughest things, especially in such a talented pool.
Yeah, just to, highlight a couple of the players here. Flying, we're going to be seeing her on the show later tonight. She is already qualified for Streets of New Capenna, won, I think, a Magic Online qualifier pretty recently. Emmaskyeward, of course, Twitch partner, incredible streamer and content creator. Beky, one of the casting team here. She's a fantastic. Mythic Michaela and Julie, we've long VML veterans. TheMightyLinguine, Caroline, VML co-chair, and of course, 2-time winner of the VML. Tanya, another former Pro Tour competitor or set championship competitor. Aria needs no introduction. And then, of course, in the round of 16, lots of talent there as well. Sarah England, a grinder from many GPs, past the Nerdy Steve, recently hit #1 Mythic, been doing incredible stuff with Steve's content as well. So lots of great names in the playoffs here at the VML. And Skybilz, should we jump in and have a look at some Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's dive right in.
So for our first feature match of the evening, it is Samantha Murphy on Orzhov Midrange. And Samantha, so from now on, obviously, we've talked a lot about the metagaming in the VML. You, of course, know your opponent's entire deck history from the past 7 weeks. You can look and draw inferences, based on that to see what you think they're going to come. So this week, one of the questions we asked people was, did your opponent's deck choice surprise you? And Samantha was someone that was surprised. Her opponent brought Orzhov Control. She was expecting more of an aggro deck, and she brought this Orzhov midrange list, which Skybilz is actually kind of aggressively slanted. She's playing a lot of copies of Wedding Announcement and the 2-drop Luminarch Aspirant as well in this Orzhov deck.
Yeah, this Orzhov deck definitely leans more towards aggro for that reason. We also need to watch out for those sneaky aggressive cards as well. You have Bankbuster, which first looks like card advantage at a glance, but you never know when that's going to animate and turn into a vehicle. You also have the Wandering Emperor, which we talked about this last week, but we're going to talk about it again here. One of my favorite uses of it is to put the 1/1 counter, granted first strike, and just completely surprise your opponent. So we go from, we're talking about Ghosts of Card Past. We always look at white. We always see 4 mana open. What is our first thought? Settle the wreckage, right? That is always something that has been known and feared here, especially if you are
You
an
can
aggro.
tell which Magic players were playing aggro during that like 2017 kind of period because they have that trauma of Settle the Wreckage just so deeply ingrained in their minds. As somebody on the other side who was casting a lot of Settle the Wreckages in that time, I will say I love it. I love just passing with 4 white mana open. I'm like, what are you gonna do? Let's see what Samantha is going to do up against her opponent. It is Emmaskyeward of Team Elevate, and she has brought Orzhov Control. So this is really a matchup where neither player really kind of got it right in terms of guessing what their opponent was going to bring, which is very interesting because Emmaskyeward was also surprised by Samantha's deck choice. And she brought Orzhov Control, and she claims that she's not favored in this matchup. But if you look at the actual cards, Skybilz, this Orzhov Control is this kind of similar to the Orzhov mid-range list that we saw. It's a little less aggressive. It doesn't have the 2-drops, and it plays the the Shambling Gas, Eye Twitch kind of lesson package, should we say? But other than that, 2 kind of similar decks going on here, Sky.
Yeah, I would always take the term, in terms of the Orzhov deck in general, the term control midrange. Take it with a grain of salt because at any point, these decks can become the aggro role. They can become the midrange role and they can become the control role. It all depends on the sequence of cards in which they are played because suddenly you're looking at your opponent and like, wait a second, I'm supposed to be in the aggressive role. So keep an eye out on that. See what role each opponent is in throughout this mirror match and how both opponents react to the sequence of cards being played. Order does matter, especially here in an Orzhov mirror.
For sure, for sure. Let's go down to the action and find out who is going to make it out of the wildcard round between Emmaskyeward and Samantha Murphy. It looks like we have got it from the point of view of Samantha. And with this opening hand, Vanishing Verse, Wedding Announcement, and the Meat Hook Massacre. Quite a lot of removal in this hand, Sky.
Yeah, if I see opponent goes first here, you'll definitely want more of removal. You are beginning as the control role here. So you have Verse on turn 2, you have Wedding Announcement on turn 3, you possibly have Meat Hook Massacre should you choose to take that route. So that is a very good hand for Samantha going second here. And over on Emma's hand, the only thing I'm thinking, where was the white source there?
Yeah, no white sources and a lot of white spells in that hand. So the first one going back for Emma, but this 6 is pretty nice. Professor of Symbology on 2 on the play, available, Vanishing Verse and Deadly Dispute. One of the most powerful commons I think ever printed. Deadly Dispute.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and we see this again with New Capenna coming up here. We've had one, but what about more treasures? I don't think treasures are going to be leaving even standard anytime soon. But here's something that will be leaving standard come this fall. The learn mechanic here. We've been using learn so much and that extension into the sideboard here. So we will be saying farewell to learn soon.
Yeah, I mean, as a Divide by Zero player, I said farewell to learn prematurely, and frankly, still would like to demand justice for my fallen comrade, Divide by Zero. Professor of Symbology getting in for 2, and there is that environmental sciences that Emmaskyeward found from the sideboard. Gonna go and get a basic, but not a lot going on for Emma other than this 2-1 and that Deadly Dispute.
No, not much going on at all. Both of these hands looking very similar here, although I would keep an eye on 2 key cards here. We have the Wedding Announcement here, producing mana, possibly drawing cards, and that Deadly Dispute as well. It's going to be how much card advantage can be generated. Surprisingly rare here for both of these players so far. Not a ton of card advantage so far.
Here comes the professor. May as well take the trade with this 1-1 because when that wedding announcement flips, of course, those 1-1s do become 2-2s and they can start hitting you quite hard if, you are in a spot where you're being attacked for 6 every turn by those tokens. Vanishing Verse takes care of wedding announcement, and that is, I think, a use of Vanishing Verse that you don't see as often except really in this particular Orzhov mirror.
Yeah, and I like Emmaskyeward here respecting the wedding announcement versus getting rid of that right away, prioritizing that. That was a great play there by Emmaskyeward, and a great play here by Samantha as well, kind of holding back, allowing that Hive to be played here. And speaking of Hive, there it is animated on the field.
Hive, the Eye Tyrant coming across, that does become a black creature, so Vanishing Verse is going to deal with it. And, Vanishing Verse doing a good impression of a Stone Rain there, taking care of that land.
Yeah, not something you see a lot of in Standard these days, land destruction, and that's one way to do it. These animated lands from AFR are very potent, and they will make the difference in these control matchups every time. It gives them a body to work with while clearing the field.
Here is Professor of Symbology number 2 for Emma, and that is a mascot exhibition that, is revealed from the sideboard there. And if you are counting along with me, Deadly Dispute's going to make another treasure. 6th land ready in hand for Emma. This mascot exhibition could be played pretty soon.
Yeah, that's not the only tokens that are going to be generated either, as Loth is going to be here. And again, this is all about card advantage here. And I can't think of too many cards that generate better card advantage than Loth.
Loth is just such a nightmare to deal with. They're just, when your opponent plays a Loth and you don't have a counterspell or what, you can't answer it immediately. Emma very fortunately has found that second Vanishing Verse for Loth, so that's definitely wipe a bead of sweat off the brow, thank goodness. Oh, it was Rite of Oblivion. That makes a lot of sense. But Loth is just otherwise such a beating. She just sits there, she makes creatures, she draws cards. You can never attack through those stupid spiders. And she's a force to be reckoned with, and here she is again.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about earlier. It is very difficult right now to establish who's the aggro role and who's the control role. It looks all the same to me right now, assessing both ends of the field here. So again, that Rite of Oblivion going the distance here, but not too much of a distance. Compliments of Hive. Hive having that very powerful, potent secondary ability in this matchup.
Hive is such a well-designed card. I love it so much. Like the way that they put a narrowly useful ability on it is just so sweet. I think that whole cycle is great, but I think Hive in particular, one of my favorites just for that utility that you're describing. Let's see what Emma gets with this professor. That's the 3rd professor we've seen, and there can't be that many lessons left to fetch from the Skyboard. It's going to be Necrotic Fumes this time for Emma.
Yeah, I was just about to say, those professor symbologies, again, just generating literally all of the card advantage right now. It has been a fantastic card here at the beginning of game number 1 for Emmaskyeward.
Meathook Massacre comes down, is going to deal with both of those X1s. And Samantha finds another copy of Loth. This one can be played because Necrotic Fumes does require you to, sacrifice one of your own creatures in order to cast it.
Yeah, Emma left with a very interesting decision right now. You could put out Wedding Announcement. You could put out all of the mascots here, especially after seeing Meathook Massacre. Could be in this case, a false sense of security. But there's so many board wipes right now. So many board wipes.
So many. This Path of Peril. You saw Samantha, hovering over it as soon as that mascot explosion was played. She's been holding onto this Path of Peril for a little while now. And yeah, she has to kill her own 2-1 spiders as well, but Loth loves that. She wants that to happen. So things, I would say, if we had an advantage bar on this stream, maybe swinging slightly towards Samantha's side right now.
Yeah, and Lolth wasn't the only one to gain the effects after. We do have the Meat Hook Massacre as well, just generating all the advantage. Normally that would be an advantage, but there's one on both ends of the field right now. So it's not as much of an advantage, but normally it would be all that much more added effect. But here it's just a casual trade here. And oh my gosh, Haiyue, commentator's curse here. That is another professor of symbology. I just
Oh my
needed to call that out
goodness.
really quick. That's
Is that
ridiculous.
the fourth one?
I think so. Yeah, that's the last one.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm looking at Emma's deck, and there is a copy of Pest Summoning in the side still. So there's, there are 4 professors and there are 4 lessons to be learned. So that is good. That makes sense. You obviously don't want to run out of things to get. So here is Professor going to get, we think, that copy of Pest Summoning. Of course, when you don't play blue, you can't get the best one, the mystical teachings. Actually, it's gonna be Confront the Past. Is there a planeswalker in the graveyard?
I believe. I wish we could see the graveyard. Maybe not. Maybe not. There's been a lot
Maybe
of
it's just to
exile.
kill. Maybe it's just to kill Lolth.
Yeah, that would make perfect sense here because Lolth is the one that's generating all of the card advantage right now. It is important to note that that is visible. So again, Samantha trying to anticipate that right now. No, blue isn't in this matchup for folks wondering. I mean, literally anticipate. But yeah,
Oh my goodness.
I'm with you, Hayu. I have to try to make a couple control puns here, right?
All right. We're picking up the theme from last week. We're rewinding, if you will. Got him. Graveyard Trespasser comes down, join Redain for Samantha Murphy. And, inch by inch, it feels like Samantha's just putting out enough threats that are annoying for Emma to deal with, or they're 2-for-1s inherently, that it feels like Samantha's just inching ahead very slightly.
Yeah, you got to hand it to Emmaskyeward, though. Emma's keeping composure and just dealing with each individual threat as they're coming up. You can tell Emma's not on tilt right now. Emma is as cool as a cucumber right now. And it's going to be whoever draws the least amount of lands here, which both players have drawn a ton of lands. Normally, you want to see this in a more controlly, grindy matchup here, but it's gotten a little excessive for both players, admittedly.
Yeah, Emma's gonna do a bit of thinning. Use that Field of Ruin to take out at least the first Hive of the Eye turret. There is, of course, a second one. Emma's still at 18 life, but this is going to be quite a lot of damage now coming across. 8 damage potentially if she doesn't answer one of these creatures.
Yeah, and this seems like the perfect time to get a ward ability here to discard a card here, because that's something that Emma doesn't have a lot of right now. Emma is hanging on to those cards, such as Confront the Past here for the discard, because that Trespasser, it turns night, and it has gotten that much. Ooh, never mind. I'm going to go ahead.
What a draw! Meat Hook Massacre was the perfect card for Emmaskyeward in this spot. And, I completely agree with you, Skybilz. Normally, that Graveyard Trespasser is annoying because you have to get rid of it, right? Like, it will just burn you out if you don't, especially now that it's night. So, it makes a lot of sense that she would, get rid of it even if it meant discarding a card. But Meat Hook Massacre, of course, a great draw here for Emma. The problem, though, Skybilz, this line that Emma's taken where she's getting rid of the Redain first, how's she gonna answer this Hive later on?
This is going to be very tight here. Obviously reliant on draws here, especially with that Bank Buster draw that Samantha just got here. So definitely the Meat Hook line, hence getting rid of the Redain. It's going to make Meat Hook cheaper. But dealing with the land in particular just was too much. If it wasn't for the land, Emma probably has a chance there, but that was a very difficult line. And Redain there being the big difference maker.
Yeah, you're actually also right, because of course Redain does make that X even higher. Would have needed to be X equals 6 because it was X equals 4 was the base, right? So I think Emmaskyeward with only 7 mana available wasn't, as you were saying, wasn't actually able to do that. So we move on to game number 2. Just a few changes in the sideboard there. Not too much going on for Samantha. So let's have a look at what you know, how this deck for Emma changes post board.
I like the soul transfer in there, primarily because there's some text there that kind of calls back to Overspell saying to get rid of those planeswalkers. I believe it is an exile ability for that one.
It
so
is, yeah.
That is going to be a card we're going to keep an eye on there. That being from the new Kamigawa set. Very powerful card. We haven't seen too much of it yet, but that is going to be a very potent difference maker in this matchup. Keep an eye out if it does hit the board here. A lot of methodical thinking here also for Emma, but no soul transfer. Reasonable. You have a lot of removal still, but it looks like we're seeing some board removal action here, primarily in the Doomscar opener here from Emmaskyeward.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Emmaskyeward recognizing that Samantha's build a little bit more aggressive, has those 2-drops that we were talking about, the wedding announcements, etc. So putting in this Doomscar, that's another Doomscar as well for Emma. So plenty of board wipe capability for now. And also has a Graveyard Trespasser to get some damage in.
Yeah, I was talking all about again, aggro versus control roles here. If I'm looking at Samantha's hand, I'm like, wait, there's no way this is even remotely close to a control deck. I'm seeing Brutal Cathar, I'm seeing Wedding Announcement, Wandering Emperor. This does not look like anything remotely like control here. It looks like very clearly Samantha has taken the aggro role here. It'll be interesting to see if that second white source is hit and how Samantha navigates that and navigates possibly that Doomscar that's on, I call it layaway. You have to always assume that that's what it is in this matchup.
Oh, in the yeah, I call it the foretell zone. I don't know why. Like, I think it was when we had like adventure, because back when we had like escape to the wilds and adventures and foretell, I would be like, okay, this is the escape zone, this is the adventure zone, this is the foretell zone. And Emma finding more removal, Vanishing Burst that dealt with Wedding Announcement last game. And you are right though, Skybilz. Samantha needs to find a second white source pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's some stuff. I mean, if another black source is found, you could Bankbuster and kind of look for it. But ideally, the ideal draw here would be a white source, because you then just go to town and kind of hold up your Vanishing Burst. You have Wandering Emperor here. I really like where Samantha's hand's going here, but then you have the kind of counter hand here by Emma. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
So that is not a land. That is a Meathook Massacre for Samantha. And she can, of course, use this Bankbuster in over 2 turns, you know, hope to draw that second card, but unfortunately not able to use all of her mana despite the fact that, you know, she doesn't have very much of it going. So a little bit of an inefficient turn cycle for Samantha. Not over yet, as she has a lot of gasoline in the tank.
I love the play here with the Bankbuster. So Vanishing Burst cannot kill the Bankbuster, which is a really cool starting point. So Bankbuster can continue to do things here. However, it does deal with the Aspirant, but again, I love what Emma's doing here. Emma is holding back, seeing what can be done with board state instead, and keeping those extra board wipes just in case you need to rapidly wipe the board here. So again, great resource management here by Emmaskyeward. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, another black source here. Where is that second white source for Samantha?
Yeah, it's annoying. And this Hive of the Eye Tyrant, you know, the downside, of course, of these powerful creature lands is that they do come in tapped later on in the game. So with this Luminarch Aspirant being taken care of, Samantha is left with not a lot on the battlefield. You don't want to be playing out your Brutal Cathar at this stage. You know, no mana for the Wandering Emperor. But at least she has the Bankbuster to keep drawing cards with. This is one of my favorite cards for Neon Dynasty Limited. Just, it's such an insane value engine, and of course turns into a threat later on as well. Here comes the Graveyard Glutton, greedily eating away, doing a little bit of life drain as well.
There's that card generation again, too, that card advantage. Professor Symbology really seeming to be a key player here for Emmaskyeward here in game 1 and in game 2.
Yeah, this mirror match does seem to be a lot really about getting value. You can, you know, play all the creatures you want, but because there are so many board wipes on both sides, all the creatures that it's unlikely that creatures are going to live for that long. There's just so much removal in both decks that are both geared to beat something like a mono white aggro, or a kind of more mid-rangey creature build, Gruul, bard class similar kind of deck. So that's really where these decks shine, is in those kind of matchups. And then in the mirror, you can't really rely on your creatures sticking around, so you've just got to try and get more resources than your opponent.
Yeah, and speaking of resources here, it looks like we're going to be trying to draw out one. Well, theoretically, Samantha only sees one of the Doom Scars right now in the Foretell Zone. Because again, what else is it going to be? It's not Alrund's Epiphany after all. So again, the downside of that is you do have to discard a card to deal with the Trespasser here, and that is going to generate even more card advantage here for Emmaskyeward, which is needed here in game 2.
And this is just so brutal. I mean, obviously Cathar is a great card, right? Like, we think of it as just one of the most powerful white creatures right now, but against Graveyard Trespasser, it's so fragile, and when you don't have mana to protect it, you just have to watch your opponent get that creature back that you just discarded a real card, to, take off the battlefield.
There it is. There's the
There
second Void Source. But the problem with the AFR lands now is it does come in tap. So that is also there to consider. Meanwhile, Emma is just generating too many lands there. Not necessarily a bad thing with the Mascot Exhibition, though.
I think that's her 7th land, right? So she is going to be able to play the exhibition. And now Samantha has to use Meat Hooker Massacre just to prevent, dying immediately. It will take care of everything except that 4/4. But this effect is so powerful. This life gain effect is just insane on this card.
Absolutely. And I think next turn we are going to be seeing a friendly neighborhood planeswalker. It'll be interesting to see which one. I know, but that's all I can think of when I'm looking at.
What kind of neighborhood do you live in, Skybilz? Should we be worried?
Well,
maybe we send a rescue party. Oh my goodness!
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the options are Wandering Emperor or Loth. Wandering Emperor, of course, that is going to very easily deal with his tapped 4/4 with the minus ability, but Samantha might be more tempted to just use Loth, get out some chump blockers, and start, trying to stabilize the board state, with more creatures on board.
Yeah, the positive about the Wandering Emperor is you will gain life, at least, off of that. So it'll give you a little more breathing room. 4 life is tough to be at right now. So it depends on what Samantha values here. Okay, here it goes. The 4-mana untapped. Oh, gee, I wonder what that could be kind of scenario here. All right.
Okay. Well, it is going to be the land getting fired up. Both creatures are going to come in. Wandering Emperor is hitting the battlefield, and let's see what she decides to do. Minus on the 4/4, gain a couple of life. Samantha goes to 6/6/3, goes down to just 3 life. Skybilz, can Samantha stabilize in this spot?
I believe Samantha can. You have the instant speed Vanishing Verse, you have Lulth, you have Legion Angel also. I really like Samantha's position right now. Remember, all it takes is 1 life to win a game of Magic here, and I firmly believe that Samantha, especially with that draw, can very much pull back into this game.
Yeah, Legion Angel does mean that she has to commit all of her white mana again. I'm just trying to see if one of those Bank Busters is ready to make a treasure, which I think it is. So I think once that last counter goes off, the Bank Buster makes both a pilot and a treasure. But Samantha just choosing to tick up Wandering Emperor and pass the turn. No Legion Angel, no Bank Buster, holds up the double Vanishing Verse.
Yeah, the only way you're gonna regret that is with some kind of hand removal here. I definitely get Samantha's take here, wanting to just, again, as how you put it, stone rain the lands coming out here, because that's what it is, right? You're destroying lands. So Verse here can nab that one pretty easily.
Get that out of here. That is going to be exiled. And it's just really, things have really, I think, been a little bit unfortunate for Emmaskyeward in this game number 2, because she started out so well. Samantha was stuck on lands for a little bit, and Emma just had the pressure, had the lands, and unfortunately has just been a little bit flooded over the last few turns and gets a Loth out of the graveyard now. But let's see what Samantha can do, just drawing infinite cards off of these bankbusters.
Yeah, Bankbuster making a really big impact here as well. And just all of these cards do additional things. Even that Edgar that just got drawn, if it doesn't get exiled, it just comes back as the casket starts generating even more card advantage. There's just card advantage for days over here with what Samantha's doing. Emmaskyeward also has it, just nothing but lands and unfortunate draws here so far in game number 2 for Emmaskyeward.
Yeah, now Samantha starting to turn the corner, filling up the board with these tokens. Skybilz, you know what's cool about these 2-1 spiders? Not only do they have menace, not only do they have reach, but they also crew reckon a bankbuster. Isn't that just sick?
Indeed, they do. So the other nice thing about the tokens in this matchup is they're pretty easy to get to recur here. And also, Vanishing Burst again, just making a huge difference here. Unfortunately, not on a multicolored permanent here, which is something we all done at some point. We've seen an Edgar, we've had a Vanishing Burst, we're like,
Yeah,
so close.
Edgar is a beating as well. Just a great kind of mid-range threat, really sticky, hard to get rid of, can't be Vanishing Burst. It's once it becomes that coffin mode, pumps out those 1/1 tokens. But I think Samantha, with the amount of resources that she has going on, is really going to be able to face down this Edgar, with Emma just still really needing to find that last few points of damage to punch through.
Sure. Yeah, there's a couple different ways to approach this. You can put out Lolth and just recreate more tokens. You can put out a mirrored Edgar here, which is what Samantha chooses to do. You also have the Bankbuster still to draw cards. So again, instead of focusing on all of the board states, Samantha here is just genuinely trying to build up cards instead of anything else. The board state is currently in Samantha's hand almost. And I mean, if you see it, it's tried and true between what Emma has and what Samantha has. I've never seen a match where it's such a war of attrition here, and Samantha's just slowly building up those cards. The only thing that's frightening, if you're sitting in Samantha's seat right now, is a Meat Hook Massacre surprise. That can be kind of spooky right now.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting actually, because Samantha, of course, does have her own Meat Hook Massacre already down on the battlefield. So if Emma, finds a Meat Hook Massacre, there is some situation in which she can engineer like a active player, non-active player scenario, where her Meat Hook Massacre triggers. If she can make her ones resolve first by being non-active player, like there's some play there when you have those Meat Hook Massacres, but she needs to find one of those before she can really do anything. Soren and Martha's, is Soren gonna help Emma here?
Soren could gain life for Emma and kind of hold the board down, but as you were talking about before, Haiyue, those spider tokens do have menace, and there's just nothing holding the fort down with that. This is a really tough board state right now, and awkward mana in this current situation for Emma. It's just really difficult right now, and suddenly we're looking at Emma's life, and it's 8 right now.
Yeah, things turn around super quickly, and Skybilz, just as you were talking about, Magic, we're always asking who's the beatdown at any particular given point. And in this matchup, that momentum has very surely swung around, and Samantha is on the aggro plan now, especially with those two most recent draws, Henrika Dominathi and Graveyard Trespasser, both gonna be able to help Samantha push through a lot of damage here, potentially even lethal this very turn.
Yeah, there's the 2 vehicles, you have the pilots here. This is very much, you have Alganjo, which is playable thanks to Edgar being legendary, but it might be
Hmm.
too little too late here, especially with all this token generation coming from the walkers on Samantha's side of the board here. And again, for Samantha starting out and being stuck on mana, you have to hand it to Samantha. There's been some terrific resource management here to get back into the game and possibly win it right here.
Yeah, and that is 4 creatures coming in. Emma can only deal with one of them, and that is going to do it. Samantha Murphy wins the Orzhov Mirror and takes down the match 2 games to 0, just with a little bit more of an aggressive plan towards the end there and just getting the better of those resource battles. So, Skybilz, what did you think of that Orzhov Mirror?
I think both players executed absolutely brilliantly. It was, again, as I had predicted, the sequence of the cards in which they had come out. The only exception to that rule was Samantha was dealt a really hard hand early in game number 2 in terms of mana. Samantha had to play those cards exactly right to survive. I believe Samantha was down to 2 or 3 at one point. And again, I remember you asked me, how do you like this matchup? And I'm like, I actually like Samantha's position despite being down that much life. It just goes to show you Magic is a battle right down to the very last life. And this was a terrific start to the playoffs. Thanks again and good games to both Samantha and Emmaskyeward.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations, though, do go to Samantha for advancing to the top 16. We will be seeing her back here in the tournament next week. And maybe she, has what it takes to go all the way this season. Samantha's played quite a fair few seasons of the VML now, has made playoffs several times, but, hasn't won that trophy yet. So definitely one to watch as we go into next week. So, Skybilz, speaking of one to watch, shall we watch a little bit more Magic and go to our next feature match?
All right, sounds good. Let's go to the next round of the playoffs.
All right, and in the next round, we have Flying. And earlier on, we did mention Flying already qualified for Streets of New Capenna, so that is a great job there from Flying. Still going strong, of course, in the VML. And don't worry, everybody, in the VML, if the winner is already qualified, that invite does pass down. So somebody new from the VML will for sure be qualifying for Streets of New Capenna. And Flying here, playing Jeskai Storm, kind of the current combo deck of choice in standard.
Yeah, Jeskai Storm, Haiyue and I had a discussion. Haiyue's like, Sky, you may want to look up a little bit and see what this does. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's take a look at this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is quite a build. And that's the thing about combo decks in standard, right? You don't see it coming until you get comboed and you have to go back. You're like, whoa, time out. Wait a second. What happened here? And Flying's deck here is no exception. The one thing that I was surprised by in this deck list, so when I typically see this deck, I associate it with multiple copies of Show of Confidence, but right here, I believe there's only one copy of that. And I thought to myself, well, when you have Smoldering Egg, for example, there are just so many other ways for this combo to go off. But I do like the fact that Show of Confidence is still a threat here. Even though it's a one of, I would still keep an eye on it. And of course, card to watch. I love the air quotes storm cards. I'm just saying that is beautiful. I absolutely love it. But nicely constructed deck here by Flying. I absolutely love it. And sometimes it's really hard to see what's going to happen in the combo until it happens. And then it's too late here. So I really love this deck choice for this week of the playoffs. Now, Haiyue, I got to ask you, because I know you are in love with these colors and love combo and control.
Of course.
How do you feel about this deck?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, obviously, it's no Jeskai Mutate, right? Yeah,
Wow!
Which was even more convoluted and even harder probably to operate on Magic Arena than this deck, but it's still a great deck. I love, of course, some Goldspear Dragon, love Leah, love to see Galvanic Iteration do its work, make its magic, and I'm excited to see this deck in action. As we go over to look at Flying's opponent's deck, Skybilz, I'm going to tell you a very fun story about these two and this matchup. Because, so Flying and Sky actually work together quite a lot over the past few weeks. They're friends, they've tested together, and we actually had Sky on the broadcast last week, if you would remember. Skybilz, and Sky was playing a mono white deck. And let me just quickly read to you, because, and obviously back then Sky didn't know who their playoff round opponent would be, right? So let me just read to you what Sky wrote last week for why she picked mono white, why they picked mono white. And they said, I picked this deck because I just feel ahead of the curve playing mono white, even when my opponent meta games against it, which I still think it's simply correct to play mono white. And that is just hilarious, first of all, because obviously they then switched to Izzet. But what they were actually trying to do was trying to debate whoever they went up against into thinking that they would submit mono white again for the playoffs. And the only person that they had discussed this plan with was Flying.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me?
Yes, their entire plan to, come on coverage last week, talk about how great mono white was try and deceive their next round's opponent into thinking that they were going to sit mono white. It just completely backfired because the only person that knew about the plan ended up being their opponent. So that is just so funny, and it's one of the consequences of this kind of tournament where you can get paired against your friends. You can get paired, of course, against people that you prepared with. So Sky, having failed to deceive Flying, the only person that they would not have been able to deceive with mono white, ended up saying, after the whole failed misdirection saga, I was pretty sure Flying would play Storm because Flying literally told them they would. And then so Sky ended up on this Izzet controllers, lots of memory deluges, lots of Goldspan dragons, and you will see I put in the cards to watch there simply counter spells. There are many of them: negates, disdainful strokes, saw it coming, syncopate, my personal favorite counter spell, and just really hoping to stop this combo in its tracks.
Yeah, first of all, that's quite a story. Second of all, Sky B, that's some next level meting. I just have to say,
it was so next level. I was so impressed that they went so deep and yet was so punished for it. It was so funny. Let's go down to the action and see if the punishment will continue or if this pivot to Izzet will work out for Sky. We're going to be watching from Flying's point of view, so we can get front row seats to the combo. And Sky is going to be on the upper half of your screen. And this looks like a keep here for Flying. Expressive Iteration, March of Swirling Miss Leah, Spikefield Hazard, and Goldspan Dragon.
Oh goodness. I looked at Sky's hand for a second. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this hand that they have conniving there? A couple negates, a syncopate. Ooh. Meanwhile here, Flying's hand.
Wait,
also...
what do you mean, oof? Those are some of the best cards in Magic the Gathering.
I would not want to be facing that hand right now, okay? I'm looking at that going, oh my gosh. Meanwhile, the Flying's hand's pretty well balanced. You do have the iteration, which will probably get countered based on everything I've seen about Sky's hand. Yep, right on cue there.
There it is. Negate is going to take care of the expressive iteration. And we do see players countering the expressive iteration a lot in these kind of matchups. Just, an acknowledgement of just how powerful that card is. Flying finds Galvanic iteration, but no fourth land.
Yeah, and again, I've been trying to learn a little bit more about control. The one thing you don't want to happen in control is you don't want to run out of lanes. You actually want to see those lanes because that's what fuels your combos. So
yeah, and here is expressive iteration for Sky. No mana problems for them. So they're going to be looking for some spells to, just make sure that they can keep a hold, keep control of what's going on in this game and hopefully close it out later on. Flying, obviously, Sky looking for mana at this point, but if you're, on the other side, on the control side, what are you really hoping to see?
If I am on the control side, I just think at this point, just more counter spells. Like, I know, first of all, those were in the cards. What have you done to me, Haiyue? No. But that
oh my goodness. this Prismari command, which was going to just be making a treasure and doing some looting, is going to be eaten up by Jawari Disruption, and that has got to hurt here in game number 1. 5th land comes down, Memory Deluge the Find for Sky, and that is a big draw.
Yeah, the land is good here, but this does open up the door to possibly play this Deluge here. And again, the more you get to search for more counterspells, the more, here it comes, control you will have over your opponent. I'm sorry, not sorry really. But speaking of good cards here, we do have a Goldspan Dragon also as an option now. But when you see 3 mana open and not a lot of action, you have to assume your opponent has counterspells, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, because Flying's deck is a combo deck, the problem with these combo decks is, of course, you cannot really dilute your combo as much, right? Like, you just don't have as many slots as the control deck would have for these counter spells. Jawari Disruption, one of them, that's going to have to be played as a land. You know, the Flying really up against the ropes here in game number 1. Sky with that Goldspan Dragon down. Second Goldspan Dragon waiting in the wings as well. And these cute little critters can close out a game pretty quickly.
Cute little critters. Last week they were called monsters by several of our opponents. Like against them. Cute critters are like those raccoons that just got announced for New Capenna. Those are not cute critters. Those are monsters over there.
So Sky, you're not on the side of the debate that thinks Goldspan Dragon is like the size of, you know, your phone or like a few inches long.
It's this big, and I know how you can see it. It's too big. I do have to say though, Flying did get a real rough hand there to start.
Yeah,
the hand looked good at the beginning, but when you took a look at Sky's hand, their hand was just next level counter spells. I don't think anyone with most decks would have wanted to run into that. So Flying did everything possible there, but the counter was just too strong in Sky v Sweeney's deck. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, when your opponent tells you weeks ago what she's playing in this playoffs round, you can have time to prepare for it. And, you know, we saw that Flying making some adjustments, getting rid of some of that removal that she doesn't need. And as we look over at what Sky is doing, there's not a lot to change, right? They've essentially pre-boarded for this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, if you already know or have a really good idea of what your opponent's going to do, you're going to pre-board for that matchup. You'll respect other matchups in the board here, but why not pre-board to start? You know, that gives you a better shot. So again, just that meta aspect of the VML, and it's one of my favorite parts of the VML, even though I've totally been burned on it before, that meta aspect of I'm starting to get to know this wonderful group of friends. But again, the meta to the meta, that's some next level stuff. I don't know if I want to bother. I'm just going to put down my big stuff and turn it sideways, and you all deal with the rest of that stuff. But oh my gosh.
I mean, you know, leveling is the right word, because I'll have you know that Flying literally named her deck level 4.5 because she was gonna, you know, describe to me in detail what each level was and how, you know, how these two competitors were trying to out-level each other. And meanwhile, you know, for Sky, they're sitting there being like, what is the exact perfect composition of counter spells that I need for this matchup?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as you were saying, this is kind of an exact science here with both of these decks. You need to make sure that you keep a good balance between the main and the sideboard properly. And while I may not know control mirrors, I really respect players for really trying to carefully calculate, okay, well, what balance of cards do I need in order for things to still flow properly, but to still kind of counter what my opponent's doing? It's really tough, but I love watching matchups like this for that reason. There's a lot to be learned here.
For sure. And here we look at the opening hands in game number 2. Sky is already a game up. Flying is a game down. And this opener is a little bit choked on manager yet again for Flying.
Again, this is the second time in a row I'm looking at Sky v Sweeney's hand going, oh my gosh.
These cards are nice.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a slam. And this one is looking a bit better for Flying.
Hey, it's expected. Well, now it's unexpected windfall. Refer to last week about that whole thing. We're back.
Oh my goodness.
All right,
well, Flying, you know, this hand not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but does have an egg on 2, so that's great. Finds a third land. Only needs one more land to get that unexpected windfall train going. And Sky is kind of firing on all cylinders here with the double egg. The 2 counter spells has a memory deluge as well, which is super sweet. And flying, finds a test of talents, which can become helpful later, especially if you manage to snag something like a memory deluge with that. That is very sweet.
Yeah, that's the second best draw. The first being, of course, the lands, because you want to find the land for unexpected windfall and Goldspan Dragon.
You've really gotta feel for flying here. Does not find the 4th land yet again in this matchup. Finds another egg that can go down on the battlefield, but that is a very painful blow there in this turn. Does find it the next turn though.
Yeah, this is still pretty live here. There is, again, the test of talents here, which we might see here, or are we going to do an expected windfall into test of talents here?
This does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You want to get your windfall through, and when you know your opponent's deck is full of these counter spells, you can then, after you windfall, you can then consider your options based on what you draw off that windfall as to whether you want to do something like test of talents here. Flying decides to let it go, which I think is a defensible position. The test of talents, a lot of the time when you're the combo deck, you often kind of want to use your counter magic to protect your combo as opposed to kind of just stop what the opponent's doing.
Yeah, and it's important to note we are operating on perfect knowledge here. So it's really tough when you can't see what's in your opponent's hand, what the most optimal play is. So again, you got to respect the play for saving that test of talents for the right time. There's not a right or wrong play, again, because you don't have perfect knowledge here. And with the limited amount of cards that flying has available, totally, as you said, Haiyue, totally defensible here to sit on it.
Meanwhile, this battlefield is starting to resemble, one of those cardboard cartons you can buy at the supermarket, just absolutely full of eggs. 3 eggs for flying, and 1 on the side of Sky, 2 in hand as available as well. And the Leah of Disciple of the Drowned was the find for flying. I do apologize to our viewers because I'm being berated in my ear for my choice of jokes to make this afternoon. Hullbreaker Horror, Monsieur Lipinchi himself is coming down. This one cannot be counted, even if you have a disable stroke.
This is a fan favorite here for Haiyue. Whenever I think of Haiyue, I think of Monsieur Lipinchi because this is a Haiyue card at its finest here. And again, that's the one.
So big and so pinchy. Like what? It's literally the perfect card. No card has ever surpassed this, except maybe Sublime Epiphany, of course.
Why am I not surprised to hear you say those 2 words?
Yeah. Look. I may or may not be being paid off by Big Epiphany. I have to represent my sponsor's interests at all time. And Pinchy is going to come smashing in. Flying goes down to 13 alive, still very behind in the mana race, but now has a Goldspan Dragon. Will this resolve? Sky does have a Syncopate. That is a lot of mana to, commit to this Syncopate if they decide to go for it.
I thought you were gonna say sink into this, and I was about to.
I honestly was, and I restrained myself. I was so good.
The puns, they're contagious today.
There it is. Syncopate X equals enough. And Hullbreaker Horror is going to, of course, return one of these eggs to hand as well. Things are looking dire now for flying with the all
right, so here
with the Syncopate.
All right, so we have a ton of eggs on the field right now. That's a lot of counters on those eggs too. You may say it's just over a baker's dozen here. Again, I have to continue the puns here. I'm sorry. So we have the negate. Oh, and that's going to be it for this matchup. Limpinchi wins the game, and Skybilz Sweeney advances in the bracket here. So congratulations and GG to both players. That was a heck of a, we'll call it sort of mirror match here. Izzet v Izzet here. And again, just both players doing wonderfully here. So in the playoff matchup coming up next here, we are going to have, let's see here, Beky versus Susan. So here we have Beky up first here, running the one and only mono white aggro. See, this was the slide that was built for me here. Perfect. So mono white aggro, a favorite of mine in the current format here. Cards to watch here. We have Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, coming back out of Dark Ascension, now into the current standard here. Luminarch Grasper, Wandering Emperor, ever so present here. And we asked a couple questions here of Beky. So, did your opponent's deck choice surprise you? Again, I want to talk about these meta matchups often because they're pretty fun, and I love hearing the lore behind it, such as the lore we heard between Skybilz and Flying. That was an excellent story here. And did your opponent's deck choice surprise you? No, they submitted the same deck that they've been on for almost the whole season. Okay, I can relate to that. We have the deck choice of having, sometimes your opponent is just going to submit the same deck over and over. And it's kind of a meta choice to keep submitting the same deck, right? Because you don't know if the opponent is going to pivot or if they're going to stay on that same deck choice here. And Beky has picked the deck because in testing the baby black and white deck was struggling more than wanted to against the almighty powerful beast. There again, there's the word beast for the Goldspan Dragon here. Again, pretty standard fare for mono white aggro as a whole. As we move on over to Beky's opponent, Susan. All right, so Susan is on Izzet Control. This is a very familiar face here in terms of the decks. Again, slightly different from the combo-y decks. This one's a little closer to the control build versus combo, but again, it's worth noting that the Storm deck was pretty sweet for Jeskai. So in this is a control matchup here, cards to watch, we have Crush the Weak, again, a very pivotal card in the aggro matchup here. Fading Hope, which can slow the momentum and remove counters as they do get bounced. And Goldspan Dragon, which again, flying is very difficult to stop in the mono white versus Izzet control deck here. I'm sure Haiyue would love the one of copy of actually two here. Where did that second one come from? Oh my gosh, that's terrifying. Okay, two copies of Limpinchi. We have the Windfalls. We have the Eggs to defend in the beginning here. This was a well-prepared matchup for against an aggro deck here. So let's move on down to the action here. And let's
before we do that, I would like to say that for the time being, the part of Haiyue will be played by Phoebe.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
So, I am definitely not going to be as swift with commentary or as funny as Haiyue would be. But nonetheless, we do want to stress that Haiyue is safe. And she's going to be back as soon as we possibly can get her. But for the time being, Sky has to work with me.
All right, Phoebe, let's do it.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's give this a shot. Let's make sure this works. Okay, great. Yeah.
All right here, so mono white going first here. That is a one lander here, so definitely putting that back to the bottom. We have Thalia, Adeline. Yeah, so that is what you want to see here in this matchup. Even if you do fear that little ping, Thalia is the card that you definitely want to see here at the beginning when you're going first in game number 1.
Yeah, Thalia is really one of my favorite cards from the Innistrad blocks. And coupled with the Wandering Emperor, I think there's a lot that could be done to try to really build on each other's strengths.
Absolutely. So, all right, we see the one of blue. We're thinking, okay, Fading Hope's probably going to be a possibility here. Of course, that Thalia is going on. You're playing against control. That certainly puts your opponent in an immediate conundrum, especially when they are playing a control deck here. And that will enable Adeline to possibly safely enter the field next turn as well, unless that Thalia can be dealt with.
Well, with that one red, with the Izzet control, it's possible that there could be some light counterspell. I'm not sure what would be done, but maybe just some straight up fireball to the face, bolt to the face. I don't know. But this land drop doesn't really give Beky that much help just yet, except to keep Adeline going and get us closer to the Wandering Emperor.
Yes, so we do have an Adeline here, but you do notice that little bit of stickiness. So one of two things is either going to happen here. There's going to be a spike field hazard on Thalia here, or a
Or
fading
the
hope
Fading
on Thalia.
Hope. Yeah, that would
Yep.
do it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so watching that Fading Hope scry right now. And again, this does slow down the deck. All Izzet needs to do is buy turns against mono red. It would be nice to be able to wipe the field, but it's not necessary if you have things just rolling along and you can be able to keep up with the tempo against mono white. Again,
Yeah, Izzet is not known for intentionally wiping the board. It just kind of happens.
all right, so the expressive iteration here, Susan's clearly looking for a land. And again, getting rid of that Thalia automatically sends a message to Beky saying, okay, lands are a little bit short here. They're a little bit of a liability right now because you're not seeing every single land you'd like to. So you can't help but wonder, is Susan stuck on lands right now? But that does open up the field here, literally. And we're probably going to see a cave coming in tapped. And then, of course, the Thalia coming back on board. So now the ball's back in Susan's court. And you can't help but wonder, keep an eye over the lands on Susan's field because we don't know if there's going to be another one this turn.
Yeah, it doesn't look likely. She's definitely holding on to a pretty good grip here, but doesn't seem that thrilled about putting anything down. It wouldn't make much sense to be waiting this long to put down that fourth land if she wasn't, well, okay, I lied.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm talking about. This is why I'm not on commentary, folks.
No, Phoebe, you're wonderful. So it is important to note, though, that there isn't a second blue source. So lands are still, yet again, at a little bit of a premium here for Susan as Susan goes into the tank here. Unexpected windfall could possibly still happen here because, again, only need double red for that. That would produce treasures. But again, there is that Thalia there that needs to be dealt with.
Prismatic Command takes care of Thalia permanently this time, at least till another one comes out, but that's not what we got. We have an Intrepid Adversary coming out and looking to boost everybody for a little bit.
Yeah, indeed, Phoebe. And that adversary, too, just shortens the clock that much more here. Susan being backed into a wall on the 5 mana at least, but it would take a burning down the house right now to fix this situation. As Phoebe stated before, and I love...
Oh, there it is.
Down the house. There it is. Yeah, so
somebody likes their talking heads. Okay. Okay, I was a DJ in my prior life, all right? Let's just go with that.
Same as it ever was.
Now, that's a different song, but that's okay. Anyway, so with that, the only thing left is the Archon of Emeria, a little bit of flying going on, so that definitely reduces some of the pressure on Susan for right now.
Yeah, that burning down the house was huge for Susan there. But it is important to note, and this is what I love about what Phoebe said earlier about Izzet wiping the board. It just kind of sort of happens, right? It's not like Esper or Orzhov where, there's this intentional board wipe. It just kind of happens with Izzet, and that's what I'm going to associate with Izzet wiping boards from now on. I love that analogy, Phoebe. That's fun.
Well, it's sort of in the flavor. They try to do stuff, and then they just, explode. Speaking of explosions, we have a Goldspan Dragon out here, and I have to say that I am not in the pocket of Big Dragon. That thing is itty bitty.
Yeah, so it is important to note here that Archon of Emeria prevents Susan from casting multiple spells per turn. So Susan has to kind of think about what is the priority here. Do I need to get rid of Archon of Emeria? But I think we would have seen removal for it by now. So Susan here just opting to do some damage here, could be making a comeback here against Mono White here in game number 1. This is going to be a very tricky road for both players to navigate. It may seem like Beky has the edge here, but the last few damage, especially against a control deck, is impossible. And again, said it before, I'll say it again, you only need 1 life point to win in Magic.
It's the only one that matters, yeah. So it looks like we have Susan here deciding whether or not to burn some treasures. And to what end, I'm not sure. That would do it, though. Dragon's Fire brings out the Wandering Emperor on Beky's side to try to, exile the dragon. Okay, so slight advantage there for Beky, bringing out the Emperor.
Yeah, Wandering Emperor is a good answer. Some people use it in a control way, some people use it in an aggro way, and Beky here clearly saw an opening to get rid of the deadly Goldspan dragon and went with it. And also, it's interesting to note that when the Wandering Emperor targets the dragon does not generate another treasure. Pretty significant when you're playing against cards like Iteration here.
Okay, Susan not having a problem with not enough lands. I think the issue now is there's a few too many, and she's a little low on spells. But the Galvanic Iteration is ready to be recast, and we've got a decent number of fire elementals here going after the Wandering Emperor, with Beky being more or less defenseless.
Yeah, and we may have been talking about burning down the house, but now Susan is running with the devil. Look at this army of devils here on the field. I'm sorry, we're making just classic rock musical references now. I'm so sorry, y'all.
Okay, if we're talking about heretical things here, I kind of liked the, oh God, what was it? Not David Lee Roth, the other guy who sang. Oh God, see, now I'm a DJ and I can't remember that. That's horrible. Sammy Hagar, that's who it is. Yeah, I liked him a little bit better as a singer. But in any event, so we have a chaplain of alms, I'm sorry, and an intrepid adversary on the side for Beky, and a lot of little Hellraisers up there. Susan's still thinking about whether or not to redeploy the Galvanic Iteration, looks like, or just moving to attack phase.
I am loving the no fear strat that Susan's taking to this. It's absolutely awesome. Keeping one devil back here for a just in case, but these devils are going to do some serious damage. I also like the fact that Phoebe used the term Hellraiser there. A little bit of a reference to one of my favorite devils there. So very much appreciated. Spikefield
Angels
has
to some, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and Chaplain of Alms not going to be taking any more defenders, or has already done so with the first strike. And
hello.
Oh, Haiyue!
Welcome.
Hello.
Oh, we're so glad.
Good news, everybody. I have not died in a fire.
Yeah. Okay. It just occurred to me that
we did carry the cats down 20 flights of stairs before the fire alarm stopped. So that's some nice little bit of excitement for a Friday evening.
Yeah, I just realized that talking about burning down the house probably might have been in poor taste. But in any event,
that's okay. No harm.
I'm going to shut
done.
up now and let
so
the
much.
professionals handle it. So.
Thank you so much, Phoebe, for
Thank
stepping in. Massive round of applause for Phoebe, our awesome producer. Sky, thank you so much for holding down the fort. I am back. And it looks like, wow, that's a lot of devils. Has anyone seen this many devils before?
Yeah, so what happened was we had a Galvanic Iteration being used on burning down the house here, and that made a lot of devils in this situation and made things very complicated here for Beky. And I was talking about how you don't think about it until it's happened, but those are very complicated to deal with later on. And the last, even though this life point total still looking pretty good for Beky, the last 8 points are going to be so hard for Beky to deal at this point.
Oh my goodness. Is this game 1?
Yes, this is game number 1.
Okay. All right. So it looks like those 2 devils that are going to basically be, thrown onto these first strikers will actually end up killing them anyway because of that death trigger from these devil tokens. Burn Down the House is a pretty insane card, and nobody really plays it for this side. I mean, it's very rare. Like, what do you think the percentage chances, of all Burn Down the Houses cast in Magic? Like, how many do you think have been cast to make the 1/1s?
Not too much, but when I do see them being cast to make 1/1s, it's typically to try to win the game. So Susan here kind of entering the end game here against these Devils again. Just a great comeback so far by Susan, and Beky kind of drying up on the resources here, which that's how mono white works. If you can get through 2 waves approximately, that's it. You have the game.
Yeah, and Susan, it looks like with Galvanic Iteration in the graveyard. Oh, Sokazan Crucible of Defense being channeled to make some more 1/1s. So it's kind of token tribal over on Susan's side of the battlefield. And yeah, okay, so here is the status of the game. Beky is only at 6, so Beky really has to watch out for the life total. There's only 5 power on the other side of the battlefield, but the whole of the Storm Giants is getting fired up, and that is going to do it. So Beky Bell with mono white cannot get past this devilish board state on the side of Susan, and we're going to go to the sideboards. What do you like in this mono white deck against control?
Absolutely Guardian of Faith. That is the first card that I am definitely casting against a deck that has a ton of Crush the Weeks, Burning Down the House at all. I also kind of depends on if you're on play draw after that, but definitely those Guardian Faiths winning. Catharus came out because there's really not a ton of creature threats. Those Devils, again, is how you were saying, kind of a rarity. You don't want to play around the 1/1 Devils just because you really don't see them as much.
That makes a lot of sense. So we're going to go to game number 2. Beky is going to be on the play this time. And oh, this is a sweet hand. Chaplain of Arms, Luminoid Aspirant, Valorous Response Stance, and double Spellbinder. So Beky does need to find a 3rd land, but these are typically the kinds of cards you want to see when you're playing this match.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the Spellbinders are good. The only problem is that most of these creatures are going to enter the board as 1/1s. And while Aspirin can aid in that situation, it's still something you need to watch out for, especially as Susan has very clearly stacked the deck to have more things to harm mono white. And that was prepared for, as we saw in the slides. You know, Beky really enjoyed playing mono white. So that was something that Susan prepared for in advance. Again, just going for that, playing what would normally be in the sideboard in the main board. And it's paid dividends so far for Susan.
This is always such a scary turn when you on turn 2 with mono white, when you have to play your Luminarch Aspirant, right? Like you just have to play it. Your opponent has 1 red mana up, and you're always like, oh, I know they have 4 Spikefield Hazards, and the pause, the telltale pause, and Becky's gonna see the bad news.
Oh yeah, it's just something where when the minute you feel the screen stick, you're like, ah.
Yeah, every time. They always have it as well.
Always.
They always have it. All right, let's see what else Susan has going on in this second game. She's already up a game. Beky needs, of course, to catch up in this wildcard round match of the VML Season 7 playoffs. And we're going to get to have a look as well, thanks to this Elite Spellbinder. Maybe.
Maybe. I'm seeing that stickiness again. Okay, so maybe another hazard and maybe a fading hope. But either way, we get to see what it is. Maybe another hazard. Burning Hand!
Oh, okay. I mean, like, you know, just bring in as much removal as you can, even if it's a bad shock, as it were. And we're going to see, is that expressive iteration being put away there by the Spellbinder? I believe so.
Yeah, and now we have an expected windfall again that's worth noting because we saw that again. I'm sorry, I had to bring it back again.
Never apologize for being yourself, Skybilz.
I appreciate that.
Never apologize.
But this round
so, you know, I'm always going to be on the side of bad jokes.
I would like to apologize for me being myself.
Here is the Spellbinder once again. Let's have a look at what Beky decides to go for. And Susan's thinking, okay, I better use this Prismari command now. Oh, and there's another burn down the house.
Oh, wow.
What do you think here?
Oh, goodness. I probably burn down the house, but then the windfall can lead to burn down the house. So if you take the windfall, it's hard. Probably the windfall is the right decision, but dang, it's a hard decision, honestly.
It is a hard decision, but you know, as we've seen with these control decks that play Windfall, you cannot let them, like, not even once. You know, the first Windfall is the most important because the main purpose of it draws more Windfalls. So Beky taxing that one, definitely very defensible decision. Hopeful Initiate joining the hand as well. I'm just feeling a little bit of like a lack of power level from Becky's cards right now.
Yeah, that's the one drops. The one drops are really good for gaining momentum, but you really don't want to see them too much past the first couple of turns. Unless you're playing against auras or something like that, then it's a little different with the initiate. But yeah, this just is not enough of a punch. The Emperor looks really good, but this is a really tough situation here for Beky.
Yeah, and Valor Sons, that's going to at least be able to protect this hopeful initiate, but Beky does not have a way to get counters on it right now. No, way of mentoring the initiate. So that's going to be a small 1/1 for a little while. Guardian of Faith the draw. Does that help Beky at all?
I would say probably not, but that's the thing about mono white, right? No one card is going to bail you out of the matchup. You have to build a board state to start, and you can lose the board state maybe once or parts of your board state, but the minute you start falling behind on card advantage in board state, you're probably going to find yourself in a world of trouble here. Whereas Susan here keeps generating card advantage, which normally you don't think of this matchup as a card advantage matchup. It very much is here for Susan. 15 life in this matchup is like having 30 life at this stage with this many lands on the board. Susan here just experiencing a plethora of advantage here, and Beky's just having a really difficult time with lands right now.
Yeah, difficult time with lands, difficult as well with that Guardian of Faith, because of course you want to get your value, right, from Guardian of Faith. You want to do it in response to something like the burn down the house that you know is in your own opponent's hand. But also, sometimes maybe like in that situation, Beky just did not use any of her mana, and maybe Skybilz would have been better to just flash it out as a 3/2 and try and get more damage through.
Absolutely, with the opponent only being at 14 life. You have to hand it to Susan, though. Susan is not just kind of going with the resources. Susan's holding back and saying, okay, at 14 life is a ton. I'm just going to hold back my resources. And Susan, over time, is just going to out-resource Beky. Even if Beky finds the lanes at this point and can start the Legion Angels, this is a really tough recovery point for Beky.
It is a Spikefield hazard, and that is, of course Susan has to pay for the ward, but that is a permanent answer to that Chaplain of Arms, which otherwise would be able to be cast again from the graveyard thanks to the Disturb ability. And that is the 4th land for Beky.
Yeah, that was a big draw, as the Wandering Emperor can be played as a response here. It is worth noting there is some text on Burning Down the House that says, and Planeswalkers. That's the important part. And the Planeswalkers.
And Planeswalkers.
And Gold Dragon.
There's always a dragon.
Always.
And here it is. Goldspan Dragon coming down, attacking, getting ready to make a treasure. And all Beky can do is hope to resolve this copy of Wandering Emperor. She knows one of the 3 cards in hand. Oh my goodness. And one of the hidden ones was a Jawari Disruption. So unfortunately, that means that the Wandering Emperor does not get to resolve. Goldspan Dragon dominating the skies now. And, Beky can play out this Legion Angel or hope to get some attacks in, but it feels, Skybilz, like the door is closing.
Yeah, you can definitely tell in this matchup. Mono white versus any kind of control deck is all about momentum. And if you don't have that momentum early on, the door closes very rapidly on this match. Beky's holding on as best as possible here, trying to stay in the game. This is just a really sticky spot for Beky, and by extension, mono white aggro. Mono white control. I don't want to think about that. My goodness, that's not what it's meant for. Mono white aggro here. Oh goodness.
Yeah, Legion Angel is something, right? Like that's another multiple copies of Legion Angel. Beky's only playing the 3, she's playing 1 in the main, 2 in the side. So that is a lot of power that can be tutored up really by these Legion Angels. But just look at what Susan's got going on. 1 million lands, burn down the house, can just kill all of them. Still at 12 life, has that second unexpected windfall that was put into the exile by Elite Spellbinder. That's now kind of available to play as well.
It is worth noting here that that extra land was pretty important because now that opens up the door for the Guardian of Faith play. That's really interesting.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I'm listening.
So it looks like Susan might have some spot removal here or is going to play Unexpected to find spot removal. But this is suddenly getting very interesting here. And Beky only swinging with the 1, though.
Getting him with the Legion Angel declines to attack with Initiate as well into the kind of obvious eat, as it were. It's one of those spots, right, Sky, where, normally you'd think, okay, your calculation is my opponent is likely to want to try and get rid of this flying threat, but Susan's still at 12. She can even hope to take a hit from this Legion Angel and still untap with Burn Down the House. Of course, she doesn't know about the Guardian of Faith that we know about. But it has worked out for Beky, as Susan is going to take that trade.
Yeah, I mean, Beky was in a position where it's difficult, right? Because if you let the gold span be on the field, all of a sudden all of those treasures are there and they all count for 2 mana instead of 1. It also could determine that maybe there's another gold span on the field and Susan just wants to swing for another 4 here, and clearing the Angel out's the way to go for it. It'll be interesting to see here, but it looks like Susan is going to invest in the board, it looks like.
So it's going to be Smoldering Egg, and that maybe gives us a little clue into what Susan wants to do with that Burn Down the House, because Smoldering Egg plus the devil side of Burn Down the House is very potent combo. Guardian of Faith is going to be flashed out now, finally, as just, kind of an end step threat for Beky. And
wow.
And all she can do really is turn them sideways.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, again, Beky's acknowledging that time is running out, so flashing in the Guardian of Faith isn't the worst of decisions to make here. Also, it is possible that Beky is trying to draw out the Burning Down the House just to prevent the devils from hitting the field, because as we saw the last time, those devils are very lethal, especially when paired with a flipped egg at this point coming up soon.
That's true. The Susan has literally all the mana that you could ever want. It's like 6 treasures available, as well as all of those lands. No gold span to double them at the moment, but we know, of course, that there are many more copies of the big giant monster that is that is in the deck. So if you're Beky here, Sky, do you extend this Legion Angel as well, or are you gonna just hold on to that?
Because the Legion Angel can replace itself, you probably it's tricky. I think you sit on the Barons for a little while, but there's a risk to both of it here. You may have to play the Angel now in order to get through, given the context of that Dragon's Fire.
Yeah, that Dragon's Fire, meaning that Beky only gets a few points, only 3 points of damage in. Susan is still at 9. This egg is about to flip imminently, and once that egg flips, we've seen how brutal that can be in just machine gunning down the other side of the battlefield. And frankly, dragons are terrifying enough without being armed with machine guns. So,
goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Speaking of dragons, that's another gold span dragon.
What are you supposed to do if you're Beky? You just have to look, just have to watch.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much you pump mana into Barons and you pray at this point, but this is going to be over for Beky really soon because, again, Mono White does struggle with flyers here. And hey, look at Susan here investing in the board yet again, kind of establishing, hey, I can play this aggro game too, and decides to do it very fluidly here with option 2 of Burning Down the House yet again. We haven't seen a ton of option 2 Burning Down the Houses in a while, but right here, Susan's like, let's go for this.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Your opponent's only untapped creature is a 3/2. That trades with these 1/1s. Crawling Barons also is only a 2/2 the first time you activate it. There's a Fading Hope as well. Oh my goodness. For the Initiate. Oh my goodness. This is just brutal. The Guardian of Faith is going to get shocked by the Ashmouth Dragon. What can you do here? This is... I feel like for a while, Standard was in this place where everyone was excited about Naya runes. Showdown of the Skulls was back on the menu. Jeskai Storm, like all these kind of crazy decks were popping up. But Izzet Control, good old traditional, hardcore 8 dragons, Izzet Control, still a contender.
Absolutely, and this is with Alrun's Epiphany removed from the format, and this is still performing this wildly here.
Beky's down to 5. That's another hopeful initiate, and Beky can do a lot of stuff this turn. She can play the angel, get another angel, play both of these initiates out. But what can you do? I mean, if Susan finds any spell that draws cards in particular, something like an expressive iteration would almost certainly end the game just on the spot. Legion Angel, if that can be bounced to hand. Oh, there it is. Dragon's Fire, and that is going to do it for game number 2. Susan is going to advance over Beky Bell into the top 16 of Season 7 of the VML, riding on the backs of those terrifying dragons, Skybilz. Was that how you expected the matchup to go?
Well, I expected the matchup to go that way without Thalia. Thalia needs to be casted very early on, and you need to get that tax engine revving up against a control deck. If you don't do that, yeah, that's exactly how the match is going to go. What I didn't expect there was Susan's excellent play with burning down the house, just going with the devil option instead there, because those devils are not only aggro, they're also removal because they deal a damage if they go down. And that was some very smart playing there by Susan. I do want to say GG to both players, though. Both executed to the best of both of their abilities with everything that they had, but just here Susan was able to stall enough in a very scary matchup, by the way. Mono White versus Izzet, anything can happen here.
It is scary. When you're on the control side, sometimes you get these draws. You draw like expressive iteration, windfall, plus some kind of card draws, some kind of big threat. You don't have removal, and then just all of a sudden, before you can really do anything, you get run over. So it is scary, but Susan definitely operated very well, clearly had known the matchup, tested it, a lot. And she's going to advance. So congratulations to Susan and Skybilz. Let's have a look at our last feature match of the evening coming up for you. And it is going to be Misha, who came out of Division 8 in the wildcard slot with Naya runes. And Skybilz, I love this deck. I know you love this deck. It's extremely fun. It's extremely snowbally. Something that I wanted to draw attention to in this particular build of runes is that Misha is actually playing 3 copies of Machiko's Reign of Truth.
Yeah, Machiko's Reign of Truth can contribute to that snowball. You don't think much of it until all of a sudden you're like, okay, so it gives you power for enchantments and whatnot. And all of a sudden you're counting, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's way more than I thought would be there.
A lot.
It is. You don't think it is, but it is. And then all of a sudden it turns into a creature. Now, while that doesn't seem scary enough, you also have a lot of trample in this deck. Again, it's not quite evident, but you have runes that can grant trample. You have Kami that has trample. This deck is just ridiculous and snowballs out of control really quickly. And unless you have cards that can exile really right away, or you have cards that can create those 2-for-1s, etc., off the runes trying to attach themselves, this deck is terrifying. And if it performs quickly, sometimes it draws hands where you just can't defeat it unless you have the absolute right response for it.
Well, let's see if her opponent this week has any of the right responses. It is Caroline, is the TheMightyLinguine, co-chair of the VML, of course, a member of the casting team here. And Caroline, known for playing, shall we say, decks that excite her rather than necessarily decks that are found in the metagame. And this week is no different. She has brought Mardu Midrange. And Skybilz, tell us a little bit about this deck.
Well, this is quite the spicy matchup here, but I do want to say always when you see Mardu, watch out for Fable of the Mirror Breaker here. And I love how Caroline added this card.
I love Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I absolutely love it. Just literally any format. It's just so much fun. It's so good, and the flexibility that it offers you when you combo it with a range of different things to copy is so sweet. So we have the VMLMTG. She expected runes. She got runes. Her opponent had played runes, I think, for a significant period of time during season 7, and has brought this Mardu mid-range deck kind of with that expectation in mind. Skybilz, before we get down to the matchup, how do you think it's going to go?
This is going to be a very tangled matchup here. I feel like out of these two decks, Caroline and TheMightyLinguine is definitely going to be playing the more control role here, and you kind of have to against runes. But this deck is just prepared to handle that sort of thing while keeping the snowball of its own rolling with Showdown of the Scalds there. You also have Beky, which can steal threats. I think there's a lot of worthwhile cards here. Ray of Feeblement can take care of some of the bigger threats. I'm really excited to see how this is going to shake up here. But yeah, I expect the TheMightyLinguine's deck to be more the control role here, and of course Misha's deck to be more of the aggro role here.
Right, let's go down to the feature match area. Final feature match of the evening. We will find out which of these two is advancing from the wildcard round into the top 16 next week, and that is no lands in Misha's opener.
Yeah, if I'm looking at Misha's opener in addition to the no lands, I'm thinking to myself, is it time for new Capenna yet? Because I could use that Naya Triome here, because it's a very tangled land situation right now for Naya, and by extension too for Mardu, because it's not like they exactly have a Triome available either. So
that makes a lot of sense, and I also, Skybilz, completely agree with you. Very looking forward to the new Triomes. And this hand, though, the 6, looking a lot nicer for Misha. Has the Jeskai Naturalist, Machigo's Reign of Truth, and Showdown of the Scald. So if this Naturalist survives, then of course it can do a lot of work for Misha. Caroline, the TheMightyLinguine on the play, though, with a hand of Blood Tithe Harvester, Rip Apart, and Luminarch Aspirant. So a lot of pretty powerful 2-mana spells for the TheMightyLinguine.
TheMightyLinguine making a liar out of me here. This hand opener for the TheMightyLinguine looks like an aggro hand here. You have Aspirant, Harvester.
It looks so much like an aggro hand. What's happening?
You got me here. So it'll be interesting to see here if Misha goes with the Kami or the Naturalist. You're probably going with the Kami here just because the Naturalist can play off of it too. This is going to get very snowbally very quickly here unless the TheMightyLinguine decides to respond to that. But there's Humiliate, there's Rip Apart, there's more field board presence here. Interested to see the line.
Yeah, I like using this Rip Apart now. The Kami is going to grow, right? Your opponent has a lot of enchantments in their deck that's going to get it out of this Rip Apart range pretty quickly. So I do like just trying to get that first threat off the battlefield, get in for a little bit of damage. There's Runeforge Champion for Misha. So that is, the Runeforge Champion plus Naturalist combo is on the horizon.
Yeah, I was going to say that's half the combo right there. If that combo gets out, there's not a lot that can be done from that point on, but that is a Humiliate in the TheMightyLinguine's hand. So we're probably going to see a double spell here from the Humiliate and the Harvester here. And I'm probably
Does Caroline have 2 black mana for that?
Oh no, I guess not. So
right?
there is a decision to be made here then. Let's see which one it is.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be Humiliate, and that is a very defensible choice, I think, because when you see that Runeforge Champion on the battlefield, you know that if they have the Naturalist, they're just going to go off next turn. So using the Humiliate this turn before that combo is assembled, definitely a very heads-up play there for Caroline. And we're going to see what she decides to take here. There are a lot of good choices.
Oh, there most certainly are here. I'm going to think maybe either the Naturalist or the Showdown, but Showdown kind of grants you that extra turn because Showdown gets played, but then you could just find another Naturalist and the snowball keeps rolling anyways here. This is a tough decision here. This is one of the toughest Humiliates and
tough.
Yeah, I don't think there's a correct answer. It's either the Naturalist or the Showdown here, though, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think personally I would be inclined to take the Naturalist here because the the combo, like the Showdown of the Skulls, that's still the turn away. There's other stuff that can happen then. But Caroline actually decides to take out one of the runes. So Rune of Might is going to the bin. That Luminarch Aspirant, as a result of the humility, is absolutely massive now. It's a 5/5. Oh, and that's a second showdown for Misha.
And it's important to note too that maybe getting rid of the trample is a pretty safe decision there, because again, you have an enormous 5/5 and now you have a harvester here that can do damage. So I respect taking the trample rune as well there. That's a good play.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We are going to see a pathway come down. That is the Blightstep pathway. Meanwhile, this Aspirant is just going to keep growing. Misha gets to untap. Here is showdown number 1. Let's see what Misha flips off the top with this one. Of course, she's going to be looking for a bunch of runes, and here they are.
Oh my goodness. That's a
wow.
lot.
What a hit.
Wow.
Generous Visitor, the perfect card to go along those 2 runes. Going to start the counters train going immediately. Is Rune of Might. You know, the thing is, like, once you get to this stage, when the rune stack, when you're just kind of going, you just want to draw more runes. You just want to keep the train rolling, keep going, and Misha has that second showdown as well to find more.
Absolutely. It is worth noting there that the Aspirant's going to be tough to get over. That is a 6/6 still, but my goodness, this is a tough situation here.
So the blood token was sacrificed to allow the rummage ability. So Caroline does find Vulture's Surge. Unfortunately, that cannot kill the Runeforge champion right now because there's no artifact left to sacrifice after the blood token has gone. So Vulture's Surge could kill the visitor. That is a way to, I guess, make this slightly less explosive in terms of power and toughness going on the battlefield.
The surge is there. We have now the Reign of Truth also. This is just such a big chain here.
This is massive. Michiko's Reign of Truth. This card has kind of fallen out of favor, I think, with the stock builds of this deck. It makes sense, right? Because they don't, if you don't have anything on the battle, it's kind of win more. Like, if you don't have anything, it's not helpful to have this Michiko's. But when you see it in this kind of context, look how big that naturalist is.
Yeah, we've been talking about snowballing the entire time with this rune stack, and this is the best demonstration of runes at its finest hour here.
Yeah. Naturalist coming in for 11 trample lifelink. The VMLMTG can do something, like maybe chain to, like, you would have to do so much blocking and use this Vulture Surge. It's just not worth spending that many resources necessarily to get this naturalist off the board right now. And that's a rip apart, but that is a little too late to kill the Runeforge champion.
Yeah, there's multiple threats out on the field right now, and the Surge plus the rip apart isn't doing much right now for the field. Harvester doesn't have any blood tokens to work off of. This is a very difficult situation here for the TheMightyLinguine, and again, it just goes to show you the power of this runes deck here.
Yeah. The Rip Apart does destroy an artifact or enchantment, so that can kill the Naturalist, since the Naturalist is, of course, itself an enchantment. So that is at least something. The lifelinker off the board, or at least the one that lifelinks by itself, I guess, off the board, but that means that the Kami comes back to hand as well. And now we get to see just how many counters Misha can string together this turn.
It's going to be a lot, and also Alganjo's there too for any backup support as well, but I don't think it's going to be needed here. This is very unbelievable amount of power that this is about to gain through Showdown. You also have a second Showdown there if you really just want to take the power route instead, but it looks like that Surge is going to be played on the Visitor right now.
So here is the Voltage Surge that Caroline has been holding for a while. Cameo Transients does get to hit the battlefield though, and now we're going to see a full price Showdown with the Skulls. What can Misha find this time? 1, 2, 3, 4. That is another Runeforge champion, another Cameo, and is that another Michiko's on the end, or is that a white rune?
I think that it looks like a circle, maybe? I'm trying to squint my eyes there to see that.
I think it's
That is circle, yeah.
okay. All right, so the circle not doing a lot for Misha here, but also, you know, the TheMightyLinguine had to do a big double block, and this game is looking very one-sided now in favor of Misha.
Yeah, this Cammy is about to get pretty decently big here this turn. There's a lot of cards for it to work off. You have the rune to get the things rolling. You have the second Cammy going. I'm not sure if 9 can be generated here, but we'll see. The rune of speed
There is a rune of speed.
Yeah, the rune of speed should be able to do it. Yeah.
And this rune for champion can get another rune as well. So that's going to be, you know, provide yet another counter. Although this, I think, is already enough because the rune of speed can just simply go on the portrait of Machiko, give it haste. And that's going to be enough in game number 1. So Misha puts the counters on. Yeah, may as well give the other Cammy some love as well, just in case there's a removal spell, but that is going to do it. So Naya Runes taking down game number 1 against Mardu. Don't call it a pile.
Don't call it a pile. The sideboard for this one is actually a little tricky here. I do like the application of the haunting here, but this one would definitely take some things here. This is a more complicated matchup, so definitely the haunting would be good for creating more creatures here. And of course, as always with the VML here, we do have open deck lists, so again, it's important to take that into consideration. Also don't want to overthink. And meanwhile, on TheMightyLinguine's side here, oh, there goes a lot of the removal here. We have some duresses for the runes. We have, oh my goodness,
this is Enfeeblement. Yeah, 4 copies of Raven Enfeeblement coming in, so that's very sweet. You know, normally you think of Raven Enfeeblement as a sideboard card against something like Mono White, right, where it just hits everything. But if you think about the Runes deck, it kills the Naturalist all the way up to 4 toughness. It kills Runeforge Champion the turn it comes down, and trades up in mana against both of those. So certainly a very smart inclusion, I think, here. You know, a little piece of technology that you don't necessarily think of as for this matchup, but could be very effective.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a it's not a no, there's actually no creatures to attach that to. I thought that was the Generous Visitor, but no, this is a rough opener here for Misha. Misha going for it though. You have one in each plan. Oh,
you know what? Just trust. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
This is something that, like, in limited, we tend to never mulligan. And something that I always say to myself is, like, if I don't trust my deck, I can't win games anyway. Right? There's no way I can win games if I don't trust my deck. So I'm just gonna keep bad hands and trust. Is it good? No. Does it work? Sometimes. So it's pretty sweet though to see Misha rip that Generous Visitor off the top. Blood Tithe Harvester comes down on the other side of the battlefield. Immediately it's going to get eaten up by this Circle of Confinement. And Skybilz, for once, the flavor text on Circle of Confinement is actually relevant.
Oh, absolutely. And now, speaking of things with big threats there, that is the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So Caroline's hand again, just looking very, very, very landy. But TheMightyLinguine is like, you know what? I'm going to let this game take the wheel as well here. You do have the verse for removal. You do have the blood token to cycle out some stuff here. So again, I love, frankly, the boldness here by TheMightyLinguine. This is great.
And Rune of Speed going on the Visitor, that's a 4/3, and key card here in Misha's hand, Tamiya's Safekeeping. We of course know about that Vanishing Verse. TheMightyLinguine has had that in hand from the very beginning of this game. On turn 2, she chose to play the Harvester out instead of killing that Visitor on sight. Of course, very reasonable. That Visitor was very small, and she still had the Vanishing Verse. But now Tamiya's Safekeeping is, you know, a possibility for Misha.
I also it is worth noting that a lot of these lands can be tossed and replaced with the second chapter of Fable the Mirrorbreaker here. So again, this is looking pretty sweet here for the Mighty Linguine. Again, you have that land being generated by the treasure being generated by those tokens. And even though you have to take a little bit of damage again, it's okay. Life is a resource here. I really like the way in which Mighty Linguine has been set up for success here. I absolutely love it. Not afraid to take a chance here.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. And you know what else is great? The reflection of Kiki-Jiki, the backside of Fable. I cannot wait to see some copying action, get going. Right now, of course, there's only those goblins to copy, but later on, this deck has a load of stuff in it. It has Luminoid Aspirants in it, has the Blood Tithe Harvesters, awesome stuff to copy with lots of, great effects. Vanishing Verse is actually going to free up that Blood Tithe Harvester that was under the circle.
I really like the play here of getting the Harvester back because, again, that's additional removal here. And now we are starting to see control being taken here by Mighty Linguine here. This is amazing. And again, the one thing that you don't want to see if you're Misha's side is, again, you're not drawing your lands. You need to be able to keep playing those spells in order to generate as much card advantage as possible here, but without more lands, that's really difficult for Misha to do here. So again, while it does look like Mighty Linguine is drawing a lot of lands, it's also a lot of discarding than drawing here. And that's fantastic here for this matchup, considering that you are running against an opponent with only 3 lands so far.
Yeah, the two players here kind of with opposite problems. The Mighty Linguine, maybe a few too many lands being found, especially given that she's drawn so many extra cards with those fables. But Misha, the other side of the story, trying to find enough mana to deploy all of these spells that can kind of try and get the train rolling here in game number 2. Meanwhile, the Mighty Linguine coming across with these 2 goblin tokens. They're going to make treasures when they attack. And this cameo transients, you can kind of tell, right? Like, your opponent's not going to block with that. This is no way they do.
No, absolutely not. After all, you do need a host for certain things, and you get 1 lifelink and you're right back in business here. That cameo is very important for Misha getting back into this game. So here's something fun to consider as well. Kiki-Jiki can also replicate the Harvester over there, which can get the removal train rolling, in addition to the current removal it looks like we're about to see here. So things look like they're going to spiral out of control really quickly for the Mighty Linguine for the current board state. I definitely see where you're coming from, Mighty Linguine. This is quite the board state here.
So we're going to see Vanishing Verse maybe take out this Generous Visitor right now. Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, that does not have haste, so the Mighty Linguine has to wait till she can untap again. Oh, and actually we're just going to see Blood Tithe Harvester be sacrificed right now to get rid of the Visitor. It's holding up that Vanishing Verse for something a bit more scary down the line.
Interesting. And speaking of something more interesting here, I believe that is a duress that was drawn by the Mighty Linguine. Very, very interesting here. Let's see what we got here.
Yeah, we saw her slide these in during the period between games 1 and 2. You're just going to have a look at the hand. There's not a lot to get. Safekeeping makes the most sense here, of course, to just remove that option. Mighty Linguine still has that Vanishing Verse in hand as well. Thinking about doing it in the upkeep here, but decides to let Misha draw a card.
All right, so here, looking like a naturalist into Runa speed here, and that's exactly what's going on here. Cammy gaining the counter, but I do see the cursor on Mighty Linguine's side just hovering over the birds, waiting for that 2-for-1. You know what's about to happen.
Getting ready. Getting ready to go. There's another counter for the Cammy. Runa speed goes on the naturalist. And there is a 4th land for Misha. So the 4th land, a great find here. That's going to enable the Rune of Might to be played this turn as well. And something that Vanishing Verse does not do, Skybilz, is answer this Jukai naturalist.
No, it does not. That's true. But that Cammy still is looking like a pretty good target here if you're the Mighty Linguine, because then it can't come back either.
So, yeah, that's actually very relevant. All right. And speaking of answers, He is very enfeeblement.
That is an answer for that for sure. That is, it may be multicolored, but unfortunately for Misha, one of those colors is white, and that makes Ray of Feeblement that much more powerful.
So here's the Kami attacking, of course. That's going to get exiled by the Vanishing Verse. And Misha is left with an empty board, just 4 lands, having spent a lot of that turn kind of cycling through her resources.
Oh.
Is that a Valky?
Yeah, that's a Valky. Yeah, that's a relevant card.
It is very relevant, and especially because these goblins make treasures when they attack, right? So the TheMightyLinguine can actually just make a goblin, like make a reflection of a goblin, attack with all 3 goblins, make 3 treasures, and then just untap and slam the Tybalt side of Valky if she chooses to.
Yeah, there's many different avenues to take with this. Valky is a very interesting card to have drawn here. But TheMightyLinguine getting a big chill here for a turn.
And that makes a lot of sense too, because, you know, you can wait till the end step of your opponent with that reflection to Kiki Jiki, because if you make the copy in that end step, it stays all the way until your end step. So that puts a lot of power on the battlefield. It gives a lethal attack next turn for the TheMightyLinguine. So definitely very reasonable to do that, and not just, you know, Haiyue's I just want to slam Tybalt line. So heads on play here from our competitors in the top 24 in the wildcard round of the VML. Let's see what happens here. It's going to be reflection to copy reflection, and that reflection is going to copy reflection. And Skybilz, can we get a judgment on whether this is a Splinter Twin situation?
I'm going to just say no. I don't think so.
What? What do you mean no? And here we go. It is going to be an absolute monstrosity, which is, I've decided, the collective noun for this many reflections of Kiki Jiki coming in, and that is going to do it for game number 2. We're going to see a decider here in our last final feature match of the evening. Woo, what a game that was.
Splinter Twin. You have to remember, you assume I played formats with Splinter Twin originally in it, so I'm still kind of a...
Honestly, yeah, I'm gonna, my fully cards on the table, admit that I've only played it in Cube, but it's so much fun in Cube.
Yeah.
It's so much fun in Cube.
That is quite the... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just saying Misha citing out the Michiga's Reign of Truth there did not do a lot in this matchup, which makes it, which, you know, is true. And also, on top of that, when you know your opponent is citing in that much removal, it's cards like Michiga's, like, you know, you've got to get those out of here, right? They just don't do anything when your opponent can just Ray of Enfeeblement everything you have. So I like that decision a lot, very disciplined, that from Misha.
I would love if, you know, in the next week, if folks don't know what to play, that somebody looks at TheMightyLinguine's pile here. And that's what's been called, by the way, for the record. I've seen it in chat. The pile that TheMightyLinguine's been playing here. See some possible play next week. I would love to see that. Okay, so apparently from what chat's telling me, again, haven't played older formats as much. 1000% a Splinter Twin situation. I will take that at full face value. So, wow.
And speaking of Splinter Twin situations, TheMightyLinguine reluctantly, I could feel the reluctance, being like, oh, 5 lands, 2 fables, obviously would be great if you could do it, but just did not have enough action to get through the first few turns. So sent that one back, very disciplined. And here is the 6, and this is a very nice 6. Archon of Emeria, great against the runes deck, right? Stops them from going off in the turn. And then Duress and Valky, lots of hand disruption available as well. Misha, though, has the Visitor and the Runeforge champion, Skybilz.
Yes, so we do have the Duress here early, and that is going to nab that showdown. I mean, I love the no hesitation. Obviously, that was the only time, but I just love the quick reactions to like,
get that out of here. I do not want to see this anymore. And TheMightyLinguine actually gets to untap and play Valky on 2. That's going to take the Runeforge champion out of Misha's hands. So the opening turns here of this mulligan to 6 have been incredibly effective for the TheMightyLinguine.
Oh, absolutely. And can I just say, I love the Archon of Emeria here. I want to see, again, as someone who hasn't seen how TheMightyLinguine's deck has played out beyond what we saw last game, do you go with the Archon or do you go with the Fabled first? Because my goodness, this is really interesting here. And that duress complicates that decision even more because, again, once you play Archon.
I don't know. I would just slam the Fable. You know your opponent's hand, right? Your opponent only has the Aganjo, like the... Yes, if your opponent draws, rune into something, like, if it's exactly Showdown of the Skalds, you can play the Archon next turn and still get the taxing effect. So I think slamming the Fable here, definitely the right way to go for TheMightyLinguine, and Misha just finding a land off the top, that's not going to help very much.
Oh my goodness. If Fable of the Mirror Breaker ends up going up in price, I'm directly going to blame the TheMightyLinguine for this because this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, it's a powerful card. It's seeing a lot of play in, in Historic and Alchemy, a lot right now on Arena. I'm pretty sure people are trying to make it work in Pioneer as well. I would definitely not be surprised. I just think that, and also like the more powerful a format is, the better a card like Fable is, right? Because the stuff that you get to copy is also more powerful. So the fact that it does everything, like it stabilizes the board, it makes mana, it makes card, it does card selection, and then that insane final mode. This card is really, really sweet, and we will see, we see it just doing crazy things for the TheMightyLinguine.
It's been really impressive watching this. I wasn't sure, much like other decks that I've seen the TheMightyLinguine use in previous weeks. I was, what do I think of this? How do I prepare for this? I feel like poor Misha over here trying to decide, what the heck am I supposed to do with this sideboard? And that's like the thing again about the VML. There is such spice in this league. And you've got to hand it to the TheMightyLinguine and Misha too. Just, this has been a phenomenal matchup here. And I've really enjoyed this one.
So Archon of Emeria is going to come down. Rune of Might the draw. So that is a glimmer of hope here for Misha. And every time you're playing this rune stack, when you find the rune, it's great, right? Like it's like a lifeline. You're like, yes, I can draw another card. That might be another rune. It's a Jeskai Naturalist. So a little bit of unfortunate sequencing there for Misha because, having tapped that white mana. And we are going to see the Generous Visitor come in. But, this Archon of Emeria is a problem.
Oh, it very much is. Yes, this is... When runes cannot cast multiple spells in one turn, it is like the perfect storm for it. And we'll call that the sigh of relief, Duress. You're taking a look at the hand going, oh, okay, it's not anything I need to super worry about here.
Yeah, absolutely. If that duress very well timed. If it was Showdown of the Skalds, of course you would want to get rid of that at this moment. So Archon is going to come in, and if you look at the deck of Misha at this runes build, there's not a lot of answers to Archon. There are really only the 3 copies of Circle of Confinement. We didn't see really where the Borrow Time came in. It's kind of hard to tell whether Borrow Time would ever come in against a Vanishing Verse deck. So it's, there's a lot of problems when this card comes down because you just don't have an answer to it.
I want to note that during that battle phase as well, I loved how the TheMightyLinguine took her time, was thinking about maybe the Valky and array of Feebleman play, but could have considered, a top deck such as this Runeforge champion that we're seeing here. And I really like the time to sit there and kind of think versus, just kind of going full steam forward here. A lot of credit, a lot of discipline here for that play. And also now this Ray could be used defensively as well, too. I'm interested to see what happens here.
Ray, unfortunately, doesn't kill these visitors, right? They are kind of too big for that. It would be -4/-1, which doesn't, it can maybe save you some life total, but it doesn't really help you in terms of the future. So I think the TheMightyLinguine, just considering whether she has to bite the bullet and take this 7 damage on the chin, does not really want to trade that Reflection of Kiki-Jiki off or the Valky, since giving your opponent back the RuneForge champion is not what you want to be.
Mm-hmm. And also, she knows that.
Oh, hello.
Oh, never mind.
All
Here it
right,
comes,
I
then.
guess
All
she's
right.
gonna eat her medicine, and that, Misha must be breathing a sigh of relief. Like, if you're Misha here, you're just like, wow. Oh, okay, all right. So the Raven Fever is actually going to be used to eat up this 4/4 thanks to the double block, because that makes everything make sense now. So the bigger generous visitor is gone. That is out of the picture, but the TheMightyLinguine only finds a land. And Misha can untap and play this RuneForge champion. Hope to get some runes going, although that Archon is still holding the air down.
It is important to note, though, that land was fairly significant, because now there's Hive of the Eye Tyrant also. And this kind of opens up the door. You could do a swing. You could do a Kiki Jigi thing here. MightyLinguine here, though. Ooh.
I like this attack.
Yeah.
I would not maybe attack with the 2/2 on the ground. I don't know. It's a tough one, because your expectation is that your opponent never blocks, right? With the naturalist.
Yeah.
But the Archon really is the key part of what's going on here. Just holding down the air. Hive of the Eye Turret, that has menace, and Misha cannot block that one. And just deciding, and I think, just snap it off. Just gonna snap off that trade.
Sure. Why not? As now I have learned today, that is clearly a Splinter to Win situation there. You definitely want to keep an eye out for that.
Well, it was like half of it, right?
Yeah.
It was the splinter, if you will. And then we're going to see Visitor come across, even RuneForge champion come down. That's going to go and get a rune. May as well get the one from the graveyard, because of course you want to be drawing the more, the other runes. Ooh, Rip Apart.
Ooh,
nice find.
Absolutely.
For the MightyLinguine. God, if there's one thing you can count on the MightyLinguine to do well, is that she has had years and years of practice of what we affectionately refer to as Tron player luck. Just rip it off the top. Why not? Every time you need something, just get it. And there it is, Rip Apart. That's going to take care of the 3/3 visitor. Archon of Emeria can keep coming in. Decides not to, which also makes a lot of sense. Could be useful in a double block situation as well. Just how does she do it? She does it every time.
Yeah, that Archon is truly keeping the MightyLinguine in the game right now. It's keeping things from snowballing out of control. And now, instead of Showdown on the Scald here, we get Runamite here instead. And again, that Archon is just MVP so far of this game.
It's so brutal. Just look at it. Just look at it. Just mockingly just hanging out in the air. RuneForge champion does get to come in for 3. So the MightyLinguine's life total is kind of in jeopardy, because Misha can just say, well, you know what? I'll just play a cat. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh my
okay,
gosh.
so
oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? I'm speechless.
Look.
Haiyue.
Well, okay. Well, let's not get too excited just yet, because the RuneForge champion does have trample, right? So something like a Machiko's or another rune, like they can get very big and very trampling, but just the ability every single time of the MightyLinguine to find exactly what she needs when she needs it is incredible. And this showdown finds a naturalist, finds another RuneForge champion. Usually you're going to be very happy to see. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh, to this jaw.
And of course,
wow.
there it is. Showdown of the scores. The MightyLinguine says, yeah, I can, anything you can do, I can also do.
Oh my gosh.
Skybilz has lost it.
She's
like collapsed in the booth. We are like calling judges on the side, being like, "Can you check out what's happening in the feature match area?" I'm kidding. Of course, this is just, you know, you put your cards in your deck to draw them. That's exactly what the TheMightyLinguine has done in this game, to be the crucial deciding game between these two players. The spiders, they get to even come in since they have Menace. Misha's only at 11 lives. So this race all of a sudden has swung entirely in the TheMightyLinguine's favor.
And that's just the power of wealth, right? We've been talking about wealth for a lot of tonight, Haiyue, and it's just so good. I mean, Showdown helped accelerate it, but this really did start with wealth.
Yeah, I mean, also, you know, if you had to name an MVP of this game or this match, that Archon of Emeria has just done so much work. If it weren't for that Archon, we would have seen Misha, you know, at one point Misha had 2 generous visitors and a Runeport champion. You know, she would have just gone off, played all of these runes, found that showdown early, kept going, and that one single card, Archon of Emeria, has just stood in the way of that. And yeah, you can see Misha knows this is gonna be lethal. The 2 spiders, they have Menace, there's Rip Apart as well. Why not get rid of that last blocker? And let's go. All of them coming in. The TheMightyLinguine with Mardu Midrange taking it down against Naya runes in the top 24. And congratulations to her. She is going to be advancing to the top 16, where Skybilz, I believe, VML 3-time champion Aria is actually waiting for her in that top 18 bracket. So next week's feature matches are going to be very spicy because we're going to have potentially like 5 VML crowns in the same match. So don't miss that one, my friends, next week. But for today, that is it. That's all of our action from our top 16 round. Congratulations to everybody who advanced through to the next round of the playoffs. For everybody else who didn't make it, you know, you made the money first. Well, actually, I take that back. I'm not sure how. I actually don't know how the cash prizes work, but you know, making the playoffs is an incredible achievement for anybody, because you have to play 7 weeks of standard. That's a long time. You have to consistently follow the meta game. You know, you have to be on top of it every single week. You have to figure out what your opponent's going to be playing. You have to play test. Like, the VML is not easy. It is very, very difficult competitive event to play. And for anybody who made it to this stage, that is already a huge achievement. So congratulations to everybody in the playoffs. And of course, a special congratulations to people who have made the top 16. All right. Skybilz, any last thoughts for everybody?
I think we should all try to brew more decks with the fable of Kiki Jiki.
I'm down. Let's do it. Just put it everywhere. Just someone make me a Grixis deck. That's what I want to see. You know what this deck needs? Counter spells. That's really what
I didn't sign up for that, okay?
All right, my friends. All that's left to do is say thank you to, of course, our sponsors, Wizards of the Coast, Good Luck High Five, NRG Series. Thank you to Phoebe, our awesome producer. Thank you, Skybilz, to you, and also especially thank you to the 2 of you for filling in when I had to run off on that fire alarm. Thank you to all of our competitors, and of course to all of our viewers for sticking with us. Come back next week, 6 p.m. Pacific. We will have more magic for you. We will be finding out who makes the top 8. So do not go anywhere. We're getting closer to sending someone to the Streets of New Capenna set championship. But for now, have a great weekend. We will see you next time. And you know, cast Kiki Jikis. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Let's do it.